Do you fish? No. You know, people who don't fish think that fishing is lazy or boring, but it is the complete opposite. There are 100 little decisions to be made, variables to be considered, and you're never quite sure what made the difference. Did I cast too high, too far to the left? Did I reel it in too slow or too fast? Is the lure too shiny or too dull? Do I stay here or should I go over there? And you know it's not luck, but you do not know by how much. Because I am never disappointed out here, because I don't expect anything, because anything is possible. I can be hopeful out here, even in failure. Because I know if I just go out there around that tree, it might be different. Something might be different. Something I do might make a difference.
I can't do it. Okay. We'll do it live.
Okay.
No. We'll do it live. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
Ian.
Hell yeah! Angler's choice, baby! John Moore's, White River, Ranger, Triton, Nitro. Let's go, baby! Woo!
What the hell is even that?
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
A sniper's dream, 100 nights of memory. He has me forehead, and after head goes brace vertical. No matter who he races, he gonna have a head start. Frontal globe. Remembers what happened to Mom. His father stands on the second floor. Why can you still see his forehead with the comments open? Shut his eyes. He got a lot on his mind. He's been told to hold that thought all his life. Gross sweat tries before it reaches his eyes. He needs bangs. Gross imaginations in 4K Ultra HD. If you drew an inch on his forehead, he would survive. His forehead says 6'5", but his eyes say 5'9". The most epic heroic song of all time. Gross forehead has a national anthem.
Bro knew this would happen.
Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing tonight? Let's get a little mic check in there. Mic check in there. Can you guys hear me okay? A little bit later than I wanted to do, was gathering some information, figuring out what to do for tonight's episode. Had a guest cancel on me, no fault of his own. Guy's got a family, he's got a life. I completely understand. It's not worth coming out to see it, little old me. But yeah, if you guys could just, before we get started tonight, as always do these Monday Night Lives, please let me know how everything sounds. Let's see. Sure, get it there. Oh, sounds like there was a shooting in New York. Oh my God. Shooting in New York might want, yeah, I don't know if there was a shooting or anything. That's wild if there was actually a shooting. I don't follow the news like that, sadly. We got Cameron Johnson says, sounds good. Perfect, cool. Just want to make sure I say that before I start rambling here like an idiot. How's everybody doing tonight? For all of my Patreon supporters that are fishing the tournament, at the end of the show, I'll be doing a quick wrap up of where we are with the standings. And then tomorrow we'll be releasing a second episode that's just going through the standings. I kind of like doing that way, like, so it's a nice little separate, neat thing. And I'll be uploading that to YouTube, Apple, Spotify, all the places that you can see that. But I have everything all organized and wrapped up for that. Today's gonna be a fun show. Get to rant a little bit, get to do some deep dives, which I truly like to do a little bit. And I thought we would let's just start with the fun stuff first, which is the forward facing sonar. As you guys are probably aware, that there's going to be rule changes for the BFLs starting in 2026. Allegedly, they're coming down the pike in the next couple of weeks. It sounds like there is going to be some adjustments to the forward facing sonar rules. So I thought we kind of start with that whole thing. Then I also want to get into an invasive species article as well about grass carp in the Great Lakes, and just how it's interesting. I believe I posted that 2 days ago on Facebook. Maybe it was Sunday that I posted on Facebook. As a teaser, I wanted to kind of get into that and just my thoughts on that, because it's kind of interesting with that whole thing where you have this invasive carp species. Actually, you know what? Let's just get into that one first. Sorry, guys, I messed you up there. This is just kind of how my ADHD brain works. Let's just get into that article first, because I find that quite fascinating. Let's just pull this thing up right here. There it is, article there. All right, cool. All right, so without further ado, let us get into the first article of the day that we're going to be talking about. Come on, be sharing here. Let's just share the entire screen. All right. Let me see if that gets up there. Perfect. All right, cool. Love the old StreamYards, man. It's acting so slow. So first article here, this was from July 2025. The video I posted was from, I think, 2 to 3 years ago, but it talks about the Great Lakes and the grass carp situation. Grass carp are one of the 4 Asian carp species. They're an invasive North American and waterways all over the place. They can eat. And this is a quote from the article here. They have a major ecological threat to the environment. They have voracious appetite for aquatic vegetation, plankton, and vertebrates, and they can consume up to 40% of their body weight daily. In Ontario, there is no established breeding population of invasive carp currently exist, but scientists emphasize that this is only a matter of time before this changes. The whole article goes into the issue that they are facing at the Great Lakes with the grass carp being, again, an invasive species. This is a high-risk area for us. Alex Price, a senior biologist with the DFO's invasive carp program, told CBC News, we haven't found a grass carp. Make sure I get that put right there. We haven't found a grass carp this year with our program, but that's a good sign. It tells us there are very few carp in the waterways sampling. This is up in Ontario. Let us get into the part that I thought was really spicy. Right down here. All right. The establishment of grass carp in the Great Lakes would be catastrophic, he said, noting that fish were introduced by humans in the 1960s as a cheap way to remove vegetation from agricultural ponds. However, they have proven to be so ravenous that farmers often restore to cabbage once the ponds are sourced clean of vegetation. Their purpose is to control vegetation. Vegetation is what makes up our wetlands. Those wetlands are central habitat for our native species. In other words, the introduction of grass carp would be like having one more uninvited guest to the party, overrun with invasive species, creating a tipping point that could push the ecosystem in territory. So why is it's allowed for the Department of Wildlife Resources for Maryland, Virginia, the Carolinas, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee? We'll just dump this shit in our waterway. It's fine. That's my question. There's a great video. I think I put it on my Facebook talking about this intrusion of grass carp. Again, it was from a couple years ago. But this whole article talks about how this thing will absolutely devastate and destroy the ecological systems that are right there. They're an invasive species. They're a problem. However, if North Carolina does it, it's perfectly fine. We don't count that as an invasive species. If South Carolina does it, that's perfectly fine. If Tennessee does it, nope, that's good. That's fine there. If ponds in Virginia, Maryland, if they put grass carp, because technically so far they're supposed to be mules and they're not able to reproduce, allegedly, but they can also eat 40% of their body weight in grass, plankton, and microbes a year. Okay? So let me reread that. Due to their voracious appetite for aquatic vegetation and plankton, they can consume up to 40% of their body weight daily. 40% of their body weight daily in algae, plankton, and vegetation. And the Department for the Great Lakes and the Department, I guess, for Ontario is deeming this a massive threat up there with the zebra mussels, the goby, and so many other things. But yet all the states in the Mid-Atlantic are like, no, this is a great way to get rid of stuff. And is it just because they're saying, like, because we do it, it's not considered invasive? And this was, like, really the question I just wanted to ponder to everyone here, too, before we get into the forward-facing sonar talk. And this is what I guess gets me frustrated is you'll see people throw non-native, invasive, all these different, like, terminology that we want to throw around on social media about what is what. And that, to me, is just fascinating because it seems like we need to have better hard set rules as a society. Because it just seems like we will. I have a great episode with Dave Miller, who's way up north in Connecticut, where they're fighting the good fight with spraying. The spraying's getting so bad, it's killing off osprey, it's killing fish. That's how much they're spraying the grass. And it's because the government up there labeled it as all grasses are going to be considered invasive. even native ones, they're now considering invasive because then they have a carte blanche to spray. So I guess from what these articles have taught me, what I can read the tea leaves is we will just deem something invasive if we don't like it. Hard stop. 2 states up, they'll consider a grass carp invasive. But if we dump it into the waterway, that's not technically invasive. Now, again, I do agree that there is some nuances to this. There are some situations where maybe grass carp are good, but we've had Odenkirk on this show before, and he said anecdotally, it's interesting, once all these grass carp from these different places died off, all at the same time, you saw water willow come back. Look at Lake Frederick. When I did that live stream with Big D TV at Lake Frederick, there's water willow everywhere. Occoquan Reservoir, water willow everywhere. Lake Anna, the hugely overdeveloped Lake Anna has water willow everywhere. It's beautiful. And isn't it interesting? It's like once all the grass carp started to die out, all the grass started to come back and the fishing got better. Now, they did replenish the grass carp populations in certain places, which we'll see what that does in 5, 6, 7 years. But it's this idea that it's okay if we do it, but anyone else do it, it's a problem. I don't know, dude. That really rubs me the wrong way. And I really wanted to bring this article to people's attention because I thought it was interesting that, they're calling this a huge issue up at the Great Lakes. And there's probably people up there that if they'd like to come on the show and talk about it, it's just fascinating to me that they're citing that it's going to destroy a lot of the fish species up there and it's going to destroy the grass beds. But then down here, we're going to pump 100,000 of them right in there. It just really, it's sad. It really is sad to me. Aaron Ball already dumped the blue cats. What's some grass carp on top of that? I mean, yeah, and I've had biologists on the show before that have spoken that baby blue cats, they have dissected their stomachs and they find grass. That they, at that juvenile stage, I think it's under 12 inches, that they eat a lot of invertebrates and they also eat subaquatic vegetation. And so you think, what are they doing to the fishery? What are grass carp doing to our lakes and reservoirs? The whole purpose of a grass carp is to eat everything. And they don't just eat grass, they do eat lily pads, they do eat emerging water willow, and they dirty up the water. And when they dirty up the water and you get that clouded sediment, it makes it so there's no light penetration and you don't have SAV growth. And that's not good. That's when you get these mud piles, these mud pools, and it's really sad. But again, I just thought that article right there was very interesting, talking about what was going on at the Great Lakes. I'm going to move on to the next article here. But then you know what? I'm going to also pull this up here because this is just a talking show with just Tom tonight. Call-in number is 667-307-8583. We are also, at the end of the show, before I get into my tournament standings, we're going to do a reaction video. We are going to listen to Randy Blockett's newest 8-minute video talking about... 8-minute video talking about Forward Facing Sonar up on the St. Lawrence River. It's only about 8 minutes. I just want to, I don't think I've actually had broken down one of his videos on my channel before. So I thought that would be fun as well. So stay tuned for that at the end of the show. Let's get this next article up here, which is going to kind of just prime us off here. Oh, that's the wrong one. This is where I need a host to help me. I have so many tabs open right now. It is insane. All right, let me get rid of that article because that article is done. And what's crazy is I'm actually semi-organized today, honestly, compared to where I was. Is this the... Oh, here it is. All right, cool. So this is the nice little article that's going to kind of tee us off for Randy's video right here. Let me share the window. All right, it's coming up right now. All righty, so manage the walleye because I don't have any idea on the top of my head why this lovely individual decided to put a walleye there, but we can talk about it because I think this is actually this is pretty good. So let's get right into it here. Texas fishing tournaments make major rule change for 2026. Organizers said they hope the new rule will increase participation. The future of bass fishing in Texas might look a little more like the past, at least for one tournament circuit, Outlaw Outdoors. One of East Texas's most popular bass tournament circuits announced it will ban the use of forward-facing sonar in its events beginning January 2026. The decision places the the Zavala-based organization among a small but growing number of tournament trails pushing back against the controversial technology. In a June 16th Facebook video, founders Clint and Stacy Wade explained they made the move after observing a drop, and this is the thing this is the little tag here I want to talk about, a drop in tournament participation and hearing concerns from fellow anglers. Outlaw Outdoors, which hosts events on Sam Rayburn and Toledo Bend, average over 200 boats per tournament in 2020, according to the Beaumont Enterprise. But participation has steadily declined in the years since. In 2025, the average dropped to around 115 boats per tournament. So, as always, guys, this is every sentence is a pause. This is like when we did the Alabama press statement on the river chain here. It's the same format today, baby. Let's break this down ad nauseum. You guys will either love this or hate this. All right, so just based on this right here, they're saying participation has been going down. Now, what's interesting is they've been saying participation has been going down since 2020, or at least anecdotally, that's what the article says. I'm just going to go based on what the article says. Now, do I think forward-facing sonar has something to do with that? Absolutely. Could definitely be a variable right there. We'll never doubt that that's not there. But with all this stuff and politics and corporate, because, you know, before I got fired from my corporate job, I'm doing the whole corporate thing, I believe that businesses and different factions have interests in what is said and what is done. So if you had 200 boats per tournament in 2020, and in 5 years, you've seen a slow decline from 200 to 115 boats per tournament, how much of that do you think is actually forward-facing sonar based? How much of that is actually due to the fact that, you know, people are just absolutely just sick and tired of the old forward-facing sonar? I don't know. I don't know about you, but I have a hard time believing that it's just forward-facing sonar, that this is a massive culture. There are so many people that are have a religious fervor almost with their passion against the technology that they would just quit fishing altogether and just fish for fun and in outlaw tournaments. What are some other factors that could also be involved there? Well, after 2019, we have this thing called the COVID. And in 2020, it makes sense that you would probably average 200 boats. I think a lot of people were out on the water in 2020 and 2021. But then you also have the economic issues that have happened since then, which I want to get into in a minute because I got some fun information on that. According to them, in 2018, the average dropped to around 115 boats per tournament. I think there's a lot of fishermen who just aren't having fun fishing in tournaments anymore. I would also say there are some who aren't having as much fun on the water because of lack of etiquette by some fishermen nowadays. So they've mentioned in this article so far that since 2020, which is an interesting year because that's the year of COVID, that everything has been slowly going down. And so their hypothesis is that a lot of this is probably due to forward-facing sonar and also etiquette. And so people are not having fun on the water. Are not having fun fishing tournaments anymore. Okay, fair enough. You don't like to fish tournaments because there are some individuals that do have a competitive edge with using the technology. Absolutely, that's a fair, valid argument. There are definitely those individuals out there. 100% agree with that. Lack of etiquette is interesting. I don't know why you would put that. So you're saying people don't want to fish tournaments because of etiquette? But etiquette's always been an issue in sports. And etiquette's a generational thing too, don't you think? Like, it's not just fishing that has this issue. Baseball has this issue. Football, soccer, every sport. If you are a dude listening to this thing and you coach a kid, you say like, well, this is how the etiquette is nowadays in 2025. So there's always this generational gap of what we think etiquette is. In just my opinion. No other rule changes are planned in 2026. In the 2026 season, Clint Wade said this will allow them to assess the impact of the sonar ban without other variables influencing the results. I want to be able to compare apples to apples. That's fair enough. Forward-facing sonar gives anglers a real-time underwater view, allowing them to locate and target individual fish with level of precision that was previously impossible. While it requires time and practice to master, it its effectiveness has sparked a major divide in the fishing community. Advocates hail it as the future of the sport, while critics argue it removes too much of the challenge and creates an uneven playing field. That's a very, very fair thing. Stacey Wade describes the technology as the elephant in the room and said it has sparked frequent conversations among tournament organizations and anglers alike. We have flip-flopped our decisions back and forth many times, trying to find something solid to tell us this is what we are supposed to do. Our motto has always been tournaments for fishermen by fishermen. That's fair enough. Let's see. Our motto has always been tournaments. Sorry. We have never gotten away from that, but I do think we've gotten more wrapped up in sponsors and business. That's going to be important later on, and focused more on making business decisions instead of fishing decisions. The couple emphasized that the decision is not personal statement against our sonar users, but rather a reflection of what they believe is the best for anglers. I would have reworded that a little bit, but that's just me. Like, against sonar, it's not. We're not against sonar users, but we just want to tell anglers what to do. Like, that could have probably reworded a wee bit better. I get what they're trying to say, though. I don't like what it has done to the results and some of our fishermen. I agree with that. I think it's also a knock against people that don't like scope. This is not an attack. It's not personal. It's what we think is best for our organization. Perfectly fair. The Wades have decided, have decades of tournament experience, blah, 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 and their tournament trail. All right. So that's the first article that we are getting into today. That seems like a very genuine response. Okay. This is what we think is best for our tournament anglers based on clearly people speaking their mind on tournament organizations and the use of forward-facing sonar. What is fascinating to me, and the reason I thought this article paired so well with everything that we're going through here, is the host events on Sam Rayburn and Toledo Bend. Those are two mecca fisheries, guys. Those are two big dog fisheries in bass fishing. And they said they used to average 200 boats, and that's gone down to 115. And let's just see, like, what kind of a decrease is that? Is that 20%? I think it's 20%. Let's go. What is 200 times 20%? 115 plus 40. Sorry, doing some math. All right, so that's about... what, half? Yeah, that's about half. Yeah. Yeah, so that's about half. So it's about 50% cut, if I'm not mistaken. You guys in the chat, let me know down below if that's correct. It's about 50% cut in what they're doing. So that's being halved in 5 years. That's incredible. That's an incredible decline. I don't know if it has to do just with forward-facing sonar. And you look at this with the BFLs coming out with new rules, Bass coming out with new rules, the Tackle Warehouse Tournament Series having these new rules, and the social media firestorm around it, that this is literally pure evil. And this technology is the reason fishing is dying on the vine. I think it's a little hyperbolic in nature, and I think there's another effect going on here in the bass fishing industry, because again, while we get into the lovely conversation that Randy Blockett had about the Tackle Warehouse tournament on the St. Lawrence River, how can it just be one piece of technology that's ruining fishing? Is it just one piece of technology? Because allegedly tournament bass fishing, if you listen to people online on social media, it clearly is the bane. It's the reason that everything is going down. I necessarily think so. But let's go into another fun little thing that I have here. Let me share my next slides, because I did some homework and I made some PowerPoint presentations. All right. So that article there said since 2020, when we started out with 200 boats, everything has been going down. And you know what? When I went online, I'm sorry, I kind of like smudged that when I created this graph. When I went on to bass boat sales by units in the United States from 2018 to 2024, 100%. If you look at this graph here, there was a massive spike from the year 2020 to 2021 in bass boat sales in the United States. A massive spike. And this is per units, by the way. This is per units. With 2021 being the absolute peak of it. But then as you can see, from 2021 till 2024, bass boat sales are slowly bleeding back down. One argument can be made, which is a valid argument, love to discuss that more as well, is okay, but everything's getting back to the mean. COVID was this explosion. You had a shit ton of money pumped into the economy, and everyone was told not to work and go outside. Of course, through all industries, you saw this massive spike up in outdoor participation across all venues. You couldn't go to a hiking trail in 2020 without it being packed with people. It looked like everybody decided that this is the first time they're ever going to go outside and walk. Boat sales, kayak sales, everything, campers was through the roof. So it makes sense that in 2020, like they said, they had 200 boats. They had massive fields. Everyone was outside fishing. But what is interesting is they said their attendance has gone down since 2020. And that is weirdly kind of similar with this first graph of bass boat sales. Interesting. But maybe that has to do with scope as well, because bass boat tournaments have allegedly, and it wasn't just these people, but multiple people online have said because of scope, you're seeing tournament participation going down. Well, this bass boat graph here represents that, doesn't it? I think so. Let's go to the next slide, which has to do with kayak sales. Oh. Well, that's different. So let's see. 2021, which was the year after COVID, was the peak in kayak sales in units, with over 1.3 million units of kayaks sold in the United States of America. Holy shit, that's a lot of kayaks. Holy shit, that's a lot of kayaks. So you went from 1.1 million sold in 2020 to 1.3 million sold in 2021, and then you saw it to start going down in 2023 from over 1,250,000 down to 1,230,000 in 2023. But in 2024, there was a massive spike up in kayak sales. There was a rebound. You don't see that in the bass boat industry. That's actually slowly going down. What's going on here? I don't know the answer, by the way, to this. I just more of just, if you guys want to chime in with your thoughts on this, but what's interesting here is I'm not trying to do correlation causation here. Maybe I am. I don't know. But I just wish there was more investigative journalism in bass fishing in the outdoor industry, and we could get some more information on things, because you're going to tell me that, okay, yeah, because of Forward Facing Sonar, all tournaments are down, and I look at bass boat sales. Yeah, you're right. Everything is going down. It's clearly because of Forward Facing Sonar, but then kayak sales are exploding. Well, yeah, but bass boat sales are going back to the median. That's a good argument that I have heard. That's a very fair argument. Yeah, okay. Kayak was this black swan event. You have this massive spike in units sold. 100%, I agree with that. And you have to get back down to an average median. That makes sense. But then what's going on with kayaks? Because that argument can't be made with kayaks when it's spiked up again. It's increasing. It's not going back down. So is kayak tournaments having this kind of issue with scope? It doesn't sound like it. It doesn't make the news. Maybe it is as much of an issue. That would be interesting to me. Let's see. Then you got Tom here. It says the current cost of a newer bass boat with full electronics is cost prohibitive for most people. Now with the cost of living. Tom, you dirty dog. You just killed my thunder there with the next slide. So it's just interesting here. This information, I do not have all the answers. If you guys want to, you guys can call in. The hotline is open, 667-307-8583 if you want to call, or if you just want to just text. This is just interesting to me. It's just interesting just to see this information. So these are the two things here. On the left is bass boat sales. On the right is kayak sales. This is units sold, not the price. Now, this is also something to kind of keep in mind here. I haven't done this work. If you would like to do it on your own and message me, great. But inflation does kind of come into this with stuff here. So you can't say that there was so many units sold necessarily. So this information is not 100% accurate is what I'm saying, because the cost of items go up. So you would need to do an adjusted cost for inflation. It's the same thing with like movie tickets right now. So if you say 10,000 movie tickets were sold, what is that compared to? Because 10,000 tickets sold in 2025 is different than 10,000 tickets sold back in the early 2000s. So example is Gone with the Wind, when it premiered in 1920, is still the highest grossing movie ever because of the amount of tickets it sold, period. even if you throw in like a cost and adjusted for inflation, it still is the highest grossing movie of all time. I think I would probably need to be in this data for a good 8 hours to do cost adjustment for kayaks and boat sales, because boat sales, in theory, as a company, could still be good because of prices, which we're about to get into here. But from just units sold, which I think is important because it means how many people are actually getting boats, how many people are getting in bass boats. That number, at least from new boats, because again, I probably should have done used bass boats, so I apologize. You're 100% right. I probably should have put used boats in it. That information is actually a little bit harder to find. But if you guys can get that to me, that'd be great. It's going down. Is this having to do with scope? I don't think so. And this kind of gets into the next thing here, which is just a little depressing. So I ran some stuff here, which was really interesting. And part of it, one, is inflation. In 2018, 2 years before the COVID, when inflation, everything went through the roof, a brand new Ford, just basic Ford F-150, cost $27,000. And at 2025, an F-150 XL costs $39,645 or $39,000 to $41,000. And I have my other notes here somewhere. Let me go pull them up here. There we go. Perfect. So that is over a 44% increase in the price. So since 2018, the price of getting a truck to tow your boat has gone up by 44%. Why is that important? Well, if you want to get that brand new Skeeter or that brand new Ranger, you need a tow vehicle. If you're going to get a kayak, you don't necessarily need a brand new truck to tow a kayak. Many things can tow a kayak, or you can throw it on top of your vehicle. So this is the one barrier to entry to people that want to get into bass boat fishing. Do you own a boat? Do you own a vehicle that can tow with? Well, the price to get a truck, I don't know how people that do landscape and construction do it right now, because like to get like a 350, it costs over $100,000 to get a 350 to tow. It's insane. So just to get a vehicle so you could tow your brand new bass boat if you got it, it's close to $41,000. Let's get into the price of a Ranger. A brand new Ranger in 2018, a Ranger Z520 fiberglass Comanche, cost between $40,000 and $50,000, give or take MSRP, depending on where you went. In 2025, that bad boy right there costs $86,000 to over $100,000. Guys, that is remarkable. That is an absolute insane jump in price to go from $40,000 to $50,000 brand new to close to $100,000 for a boat. So if you were starting from absolute scratch and you got the truck and you got the boat, you're over $100,000 in the hole, at least. If you're going used, you're probably still $100,000 in the hole, give or take, if you're going fiberglass. Now, this is if you are probably going to try to go compete in the Bass Opens, the Tackle Warehouse Pro Tour, BFL events. If you're going to get a little Grizzly jet boat or a little, I don't even know, like a track or something like that, to where you're just going to go fun fish, or you're going to be fishing the electric motor only lakes. Like we have in Virginia and Maryland. We have a lot of them. They're really good. Probably a little bit different. Probably the cost is a little bit down, but honestly, some of those electric engines are pretty expensive. So that's an insane jump in inflation. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Let me pull up my other argument right here. Perfect. So I want to get back to this real quick here, just because I just want to kind of throw you some stats here that I kind of messed up on. Okay, kayak sales. So in 2018, you had over 900,000 units. In 2018, you had over 900,000 units. In 2019, you had over 950,000 units. In 2020, you had over 1 million units sold. You go all the way to 2024, you have over 1,320,000 units sold. In bass boats, in 2018, you have 40,000 units sold. In 2018, you have over 40,000 units sold. In 2019, you have 42,000 units sold. In 2020, the year of COVID, you have a big bump of 49 59,000 units sold, which is a 40% increase. And then in 2021, it jumps from 59,000 units to 62,000 units sold. And in 2022, that goes to 55,000 units sold. It's dropping back down. In 2023, it keeps going down to 51 and then 48,000. It's just plummeting right back down to its mean. Now, the reason, again, I wanted to do units sold is how many people are getting out there and are actually fishing. So if you look at it from a kayak numbers, now granted, I just did, and what I documented was just kayaks. I didn't try to specify bass fishing kayaks versus inflatable because talking to people at Jake's Bait and Tackle and local stores, not all of them go out there and buy a bona fide 120 or what have you. They want to go fishing and they go to Dick's Sporting Goods and they just buy a kayak and they grab a spinning rod and they go fishing. So I wanted to make sure I counted them and not try to split the beta bee too much on that, which again, maybe it could be an issue with my data. 100% would be lenient with that there. But my point is, if you have 100, in 2024, if you have 1 million, over 1 million units sold, that's a lot of people getting out there and fishing. And anecdotally, I know so many people that have commented and just like how many more kayakers they see nowadays. So I think what's interesting is from a fishing standpoint, it sounds like fishing is relatively healthy. There's a lot more people that are just fishing, quote unquote, whether it's a jet boat, bank fishing, kayak fishing, jet boat fishing, electric. There's tons of that. What is dying on the vine is the bass boat side of things, allegedly, which is 100% due apparently to Forward Facing Sonar. But there's something else here. And this is what I think the canary in the coal mine is. My generation, the millennials, by the end of 2024, home ownership, let me pull up this article I found this from. Where is it? Okay, this is from the Times. This is from the Times article. I'll put a link in the episode description to this article as well. By the end of 2024, home ownership rate for those under the ages of 36 has declined to 37.3%, the lowest level since 2008. I wonder what happened in 2008. Over 50% of millennials and Gen Z report having a side hustle of some sort to make ends meet. This, I'm not going to be talking about, we're not going to get into the weeds here of, okay, but I'm fine and you just got to work. That's not the point. I'm just talking from big picture. Let's just look from a mile high at this data. Let's say this is 100% true. Again, this is the Times article. Could be wrong 100%, but let's just assume, benefit of the doubt, that this bad boy is correct. What do you need to have a bass boat? We don't talk about this. Where are you going to put the damn thing? You just got that brand new Ranger. You just got that new Skeeter boat, 21 foot. You just got that new Ranger. It's a 520. That's 20, 21 feet, 22 feet. You need a garage. You need a place to keep it. You're going to do that at a duplex, at a rental house? Will they allow it? What if you're living in an apartment complex? Is all you can afford? Home ownership, in my opinion, this is an interesting thing to me here. How much does home ownership affect bass boat sales? If you don't have a place to put your bass boat, why would you buy a bass boat? If you need a side hustle to make ends meet, you can't afford a brand new truck or a used truck to be able to pull the bass boat. So I think there's something going on with the economy that we truly aren't talking about because we don't want to talk about it if you're an industry. If you talk about it, it's like saying Beetlejuice. If you say Beetlejuice 3 times, he's going to appear. And I think it's the same thing. Like, no one in the fishing industry, look at ICAST. If you tell or ask anybody, hey, how's the economy doing? No one at ICAST would be like, it's shit. We're all going to be out of a job. So no one's going to say that. It's a tough economy. But this is so interesting to me that you're seeing this correlation here where apparently people of my generation, listen, I don't own a big fancy farm. I really don't. I'm blessed that I got a boat that, you know, my parents helped get for me when I was 16, and that old sucker still goes. But if it died, I can't afford a brand new boat. I just can't. You know, it's expensive as hell. And I work hard, and that's fine. And I'm not trying to poo-poo it, but to be able to afford a $100,000 bass boat, that's not a smart financial decision for me. You know, I think me and my wife might want to have kids, you know, in the next couple of years. How could I justify a bass boat? And that's what's interesting is there's so many people when you get out of college, that spending age, that's really hard for them. It's a special set of people that can make that leap financially to do it. So I think when you go back again and you looking at these decreased numbers here, I think there is, maybe again, I could be wrong, correlation, causation. between the peak of units sold in 2021 to where we are with millennials and Gen Z, where only 37% own a house. So only 37% of people, based on this article, have a place to put a brand new bass boat. Unless you have some parents, some really cool parents or some friends that let you keep it somewhere, you don't have a place to put it. And then if you could afford the boat, do you afford the truck that actually can go with it as well? I don't know. I just think that's kind of interesting to kind of keep in mind there when we get into it, that I don't think it's necessarily just forward-facing sonar, because on the kayak side, forward-facing sonar is there. People, you don't see the same complaining about forward-facing sonar on the kayak side of things with the Hobies and the Bassmaster kayak trail and all these different kayak trails. There's some murmurs, but that's about it. No one really cares. I mean, if you look at all the tournaments that have happened, like NVKBA is a great example. I believe last year, half the winners of the events didn't have forward-facing sonar on their kayak. And when Mike listens to this or somebody else from NVKBA, they can catch me on that. But a good portion of them didn't have scope. This year, there have been a couple of people that have won without forward-facing sonar. I won without forward-facing sonar. I almost drowned on the Shenandoah without forward-facing sonar. I think the guy that won the Shenandoah event, Cole, he doesn't have a motor or anything. He's like old school, like he feels the water and can tell you your temperature kind of deal. All right, let's get into some of these questions here before I move on to the next thing. I know it took me 3 years to realize my first kayak wasn't exactly what I wanted, and that's when I traded up. Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing is, if you get a kayak or a plastic boat or an aluminum boat, it will cost you between what? From $0 to $5,000 for a brand new spanking kayak, depending, versus $100,000 with a bass boat. Again, is the kayak expensive? Yes, but everything is relative. We got Jonathan here. Co's are running to kayaks, not new boats. Combination cost, forward-facing sonar, and higher interest rates. No, 100%. And Jonathan, thank you for bringing that up right there. That's it. Like I am not this. It's weird that I feel like I've gotten into this position where I feel like forward-facing sonar has been beaten up so much. I got to go defend it. Like, all right, listen, I agree there's problems with it, but it's almost feel like it's a Salem witch trial where people, I think, truly believe if we just burnt Garmin at the stakes, it would rain again and all of our crops would have water. So as long as we just sacrifice our wife and the forward-facing sonar, everything would be happy again. I feel like I don't think that's necessarily it. I think that might have a good bump in certain demographics, but I don't think that's like this holy bullet that if you just get rid of forward-facing sonar, everything magically goes away. Because Jonathan, like you stated there, kayaks are eating up a lot of lunch when it comes to bass boats. And I've been saying this for a while. Online tournaments, Tourney X, Fishing Chaos, just to name two off the top of my head, is two apps that run it. How many online fishing tournaments are there where you don't need a big fancy boat? You can fish from shore, take a picture of a fish. They have cat fishing tournaments like this now. They have bank tournaments. The Fishing the DMV tournaments I have. You don't need a big fancy boat. You can fish from anything you want. That's perfectly fine. You can fish from the shore. That's perfectly fine too. So that to me is just all fascinating that we want to blame one thing, but we don't want to see all the other possible stuff. The cost is a big one. And you can make more money at kayak fishing. The only reason you can make more money at it is because your overall costs are down too. And this is a sad thing. I don't know what you kind of do with this. James says, even to buy a new reel, rod and reel to outfit that boat with, they're taking another couple thousand. It's crazy. Everything is getting more expensive, but we don't want to be talking about that. And that to me is what's absolutely fascinating. And we got one more here. Most new homes that have a garage, the garage isn't big enough to fit. Oh, Tom, I didn't think about that. Is that true? Oh, wow. Most new homes that have a garage, the garage isn't big enough to fit the boat in. Then the HOA won't allow you to park it in the driveway. I have never had to deal with an HOA my whole life. I don't know about this. I grew up on a farm, sadly. I am very white upper class. I did grow up on a farm before I now moved. I'm in the slums of Hagerstown. Sorry for people that live in Hagerstown. It's not Northern Virginia. Let's just say that. I didn't know about it. Is that true? HOAs won't let you park a bass boat on the side of the road? Like, again, how many neighborhoods are like this throughout the United States? At least here in Northern Virginia, that's a thing that we're not actually, I think, talking about necessarily. So with all of that said, let's get into the other fun thing of the day. We're going to be talking about the most lovely man there is in the fishing industry. And again, we're going to be breaking the video down, try to be respectful as possible. And I just want to hear about what this individual has to say. It is Randy Blockett talking about Forward Facing Sonar. This will be fun to share audio. Share a tab instead. All right, cool. So, all right, boom. All right, guys, let's see if we get this here. Oh, this is going to be fun. Let me get the screen right. All right, cool. All right, you guys ready? All right, so this is, let's see. This video is what happened at the St. Lawrence River MLF tournament last week is pathetic. And I know where this kind of starts. So let's start at like the 1 minute mark here. All right, cool. Here we go.
Deal. They have a deal where you're allowed to use.
All right, sorry about that. Here we go. Pause it. Back it up a little bit. Sorry.
We've had some really good channel growth over the past 6 months, really. So thank you very much for that. Really appreciate that. Okay, they just got done with that Tackle Warehouse Invitational up there at the St. Lawrence River, and in the Tackle Warehouse deal, they have a deal where you're allowed to use spotlighting for bass the first day of the tournament. Then the spotlighting for bass is not legal the second day of the tournament. And
spotlighting? What is that about? Does he say spotlighting a lot? What does he mean by spotlighting? Does he mean like spotlighting deer? Huh. Spotlighting bass. Let me check with a friend. Hold on. He said. All right. So interesting. So yeah, when he means is spotlighting, he means like spotlighting for deer. So that he's clearly saying that to have a negative connotation with forward-facing sonar. JP, yes, yeah, I believe, and we're gonna replay this back. I believe that's what he means.
Spotlighting for bass the first day of the tournament. Then the spotlighting for bass is not legal the second day of the tournament.
Okay, so let's just break that down real quick. Spotlighting for deer. Basically, this is in a nutshell because I haven't deer hunted in 12 years, I think, but allegedly what spotlighting for deer is, you would actually have a massive flashlight or a torch, a big spotlight. You throw that on a deer and it basically pauses it so it's afraid to move. And then you can then take your rifle, crossbow, bow, whatever you want to do to blow them away. So the spotlighting makes hunting easier, allegedly, because you just shine that light on them, it freezes it, and then you can blow it away with a rifle. How is that comparable to forward-facing sonar? Because if I hit a fish with the cancer beam, with the FS beam, I'm not shooting it with a 7mm. You know, the difference between hunting and fishing is the thing is like, if I see a buck, if I see a 10-pointer in my deer stand and I get close enough for a shot, I'm not then trying to convince it to eat a lure. I'm not trying to piss it off to get a lure. That part, that decision the deer doesn't have. Once he's in range of my, bow or rifle, it's kind of game over for him. He doesn't have another choice. But scope, even if I see the fish, doesn't mean I can catch him. I still have to convince him to eat, or I still have to aggravate him to eat. That is interesting. And then we got Cliff here. We got Cliff hunts, by the way, guys. I've never heard that before, and it doesn't make any sense. Jonathan, both cheating in his eyes. Okay, Jonathan, that's fair enough. Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. So he thinks he's trying to make that as a correlation. Okay, interesting. Let's keep going here. I don't necessarily agree with that analogy there of it being, because again, hunting is an analogy there. I think the better analogy for scope for hunting would be if you could see where the deer were. That's it. You just leave it right there. If you somehow had a GPS tracker, and this is not even the best analogy, to where you could see on your phone where the deer are, you still have to then find them, like get close enough for a shot, which means there's still the variable of you could spook it. You would still have to set up downwind. You'd have to get in the right position, but you know that there's a big buck in this generic area. But then from after that intel is taken, you then still have to do the natural fundamentals of hunting to make it work. Maybe that's a better analogy, but let's continue here with what Randy has to say.
And then you can use it the last day of the tournament. So here's my point that I
Oh, let me break it up. So sorry.
Spotlighting for bass the first day of the tournament. Then the spotlighting for bass is not legal the second day of the tournament, and then you can use it the last day of the tournament. So here's my point that I want to make, but to all the people out there that say these guys catch them just as good without forward-facing sonar, then I wanted to comment on this a little bit more. The second day of the tournament, when they had the no forward-facing sonar, 58 of the 88 anglers in that tournament that caught fish. There was I think there was 90 people in the tournament, and 2 of them didn't catch anything the whole tournament. I don't know if they broke down or whatever, but anyway, 58 of the 88 anglers had a smaller bag the second day of the tournament when forward-facing sonar was not allowed. 58 out of 88, guys. Now, that doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, I'm surprised there wasn't even more, but that sort of gives you a good indication of the people that were using forward-facing sonar in that tournament versus the people that weren't. I mean, those, more than likely, those 30 that did not, that had an equal or larger bag the second day, they were probably fishing with real bass fishing techniques, like.
Okay, hold on there. Okay, so what he's saying is the first day of the competition is tackle warehouse. Day 1 you can use scope. Day 2 you can't use scope. Day 3 you're back with using scope. Day 2 there was a huge drop off in the bag weights. 100% that makes sense. No question there. Scope does make you more efficient. It makes you statistically more efficient to be able to do your job. Period. End of story. I completely agree with that. In theory, a live scope tournament gives you a higher probability of catching a bigger bag for that body of water, especially when you're up on the Great Lakes. And I think it also depends on the time of year. I think JP is in the chat, I think still. If that's the right JP I'm thinking about, by the way, sorry. But yeah, I think there's certain times of year when they're spawning again that you can just smoke them without scope as well. But in general, there are lakes. Lake Frederick up in Front Royal, scope certain times of the year 100% will help you catch the biggest bag possible in that lake. So I agree with that so far. Yeah, absolutely.
More than likely, those 30 that did not, that had an equal or larger bag the second day, they were probably fishing with real bass fishing techniques, like spinner baits or jerk baits or top waters or whatever. And
those people were fishing with real techniques, spinner baits, top water. Can't you use those techniques with scope too? Is he saying that you only use a jigging minnow with scope? Because I know guys that use top water with live scope. They can see a school over cane piles and they know okay, this is where I'm going to throw my big ass plug to try to get them to come up. Interesting.
The 58 guys that had smaller bags, no doubt, were using the spotlighting technique for bass. That's the predominant, way to catch them up there.
Spotlighting technique for bass. Wow. So trying to give him the benefit of the doubt here. Spotlighting technique for bass. So he's just saying just using scope. It's just so weird how he's trying to separate it out. If you're using a spinnerbait or top water, you're not using a spotlighting technique. But then I guess a spotlighting technique is differently from that, which I'm assuming is drop shot, jigging minnow, that kind of crap. But in theory, any technique in theory could be used with scope or spotlighting. I mean, a jigging minnow is probably the one that's the most scopy thing to do. Let's be fair. But I've used multiple things on scope before. I've used spinner baits, chatter baits, top water plugs. So it's not just scope baits versus non-scope baits. For the most part, again, I think the jigging minnow is the poster child of a live scope bait. But that's interesting.
It would even be more than that if they would have the tournament this week, because we're getting further and further away from the spawn. But this is a prime example of what I'm talking about as far as forward-facing sonar creates this illusion of a certain quality of fishing on any particular body of water.
Okay, that's interesting. I like that. Okay, so it creates an illusion. It's It's like using an aluminum baseball bat. I don't like to use steroids anymore because I really reflected on that. The problem with steroids in baseball was they were always illegal and people cheated. You weren't allowed to take tren. Barry Bonds wasn't legally allowed to let his head and his foot grow 4 sizes. That was illegal, and he didn't get caught cheating. So scope, in that sense, it's a bad analogy because people that are using scope right now aren't cheating because it's legal. An aluminum bat maybe is better because, if aluminum bats were legal because, they don't use them, it would pad the stats completely. Maybe. I still haven't found a great analogy. I'm still working on the analogy for this bad boy. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily cheating because, in the sense of it, because it's legal. Does that make sense? But it does 100%, without a doubt, really highlight a fishery. It will really help you catch the biggest fish that live there, specific times of year. Again, with all of our lakes, I think I did this already in an episode, all of our lakes are getting older, and when lakes get older, they get cleaner. They get a lot clearer. There's less shallow water habitat. When you go to places like the upper Mississippi, you go to places like the Potomac River, the James River, forward-facing sonar is just not as prevalent. Is it prevalent? 100%. I will tip the cap to you that there will be people that will scope, whether it's 2 inches or 50 feet. But you're going to get more of a balancing out if you go to bodies of water that still have a very good shallow water bite. And a lot of that's right now is our tidal water estuaries. That's why they went to Albemarle Sound. Granted, that's a bad example because the guy that won with scope. But there are a lot of people in the top 10 that didn't necessarily use scope 100%. James River, the guy that won it, Mr. Poche, won it without scope 100%. Potomac River, there are a ton of people in the top 5 that did extremely well without scope there on the Potomac River. And then the list goes on and on. But if you go to lakes like Lake Erie, if you go to Smith Lake in Alabama in the summertime in the heat of June, when you get these fish pulled off floating in the middle of nowhere, yeah, the only way that you can effectively target them is with scope. And so I've always been like, how much of it is live scope versus the places we go, and is there a combination that we could kind of balance it out? Because if you go to Lake Fork or Toledo Bend in February, yeah, no bleep like it's going to be one that way. The last time Bassmaster was at Lake Gunnersville, it was one without forward-facing sonar, and I believe that last time Bassmaster was at Lake Gunnersville, I don't think every manufacturer had a live scope. I believe it was just Garmin that had the monopoly, so to speak, on the quality black box. I could be mistaken. You guys can let me know in the comment section down below. But that was one in grass, or a lot of people in the top 5 were in the grass. So I don't necessarily think it's just, again, bodies of water are so important, having good quality bodies of water. But if we can't do habitat restoration in a lot of our bodies of water, if we're going to spray away every piece of grass we have, and we're going to get rid of every laydown and every stump, and nothing is left but, moss back fish attractants, that's going to be the easiest way to catch them. It's going to be the most efficient way. But I do agree so far that, I mean, I think he's coming with a little bit of a negative slant, but yeah, it's going to show off a body of water better. Which, is that a bad thing to show off a body of water better? Lake Frederick, again, in Front Royal, people thought that place sucked. A lot of people did. And then scope comes around and people realize, oh, these fish are chasing herring in the middle of the lake. And all of a sudden, there's a ton of people that fish there now. Like, oh, this is a place really good. Lake Mooney in Fredericksburg, Virginia, same thing. Tons of alewife, I believe, that are in there. And forward-facing sonar has really made that place shine. Without forward-facing sonar, would as many people fish there or want to fish there or have, this is a bad word, fun? Would people have fun fishing there? I don't know. Let's continue with what he's saying.
When you're tapping into that population of fish out there that are just, hanging out in their deep water sanctuaries that they need to be protected in. Not
deep water sanctuaries that need to be protected in. I need to get caught up on my Randy Blockett lore. Deep water sanctuaries. If you guys want to call in, you can. 667-307-8583. Deep water sanctuaries. Okay. So I believe what he's saying is fish in deep water need to be protected. They shouldn't be allowed to be molested, and forward-facing sonar allows fish to be molested. Is that correct? His thought process there? Okay. True, but I think Forward Facing Sonar has shown us a lot of interesting things that have been debunked about fish biology, behavior, and all that. And that, why are they out there? It's not just because they feel like they're molested on the bank or near the shore. They are also there because there's food. They rest. We're learning that more big bass spawn out in deeper water. They spawn in treetops. They don't spawn in a stereotypical place. It's such a small population of fish that actually do that, which is fascinating to me that this scope has been allowed us to do. So I don't know if it's sanctuary. Interesting. But if he's thinking like there are fish that shouldn't be molested because of scope. Now, I think this is a great argument that if somebody wants to come on that fishes for walleye or striper or crappie, I think this would be a fascinating thing with a put and take fish species that's maybe protected or whatever. I think that's a fascinating conversation to have about the effects of live scope, because if you're crappie fishing for big females, and you can specifically target the biggest female crappie to pull out of a body of water, I mean, does that give you a higher chance of hurting the crappie population? Probably, right? If you can target the bigger ones and then catch them, you would have a statistical advantage. And I'm sorry, that's different than a bass tournament, because I might be catching the 6-pounder, but I'm putting it back in the water. Yes, there's a mortality rate with catching it, but the mortality rate for catch and release, regardless if it's catch photo or catch weigh, I want to let you know a secret. The mortality rate is way lower than if I catch and put it in the cooler to eat. So the mortality rate on a crappie fry or a walleye fry compared to a catch, weigh, release, or catch live well release tournament, it's completely different. So I think there could be a good argument to be made there, 100%. And again, depending on the size of the body of the water. Let him continue here. I'll back up just a little bit too, so we can catch it.
Need to be protected in. Not anything that's really, surprising to me. It's surprising to some people out there, because apparently there's a lot of people out there that think that forward-facing sonar is just another tool like a plastic worm, and it doesn't have any impact whatsoever on people's successes. But we've seen this repeatedly.
Who is he talking to? What is he talking about? Of course it has an impact on people's success. I'm confused. Like, so, of course, it's not a tool. Yeah, it is a tool. It's just like a worm. It's a different type of tool. I wouldn't use a plastic worm as the example. It's no different than, I don't know, side scan. Like, I guess a better example would be like comparing it to other kind of electronic, I don't know, spot lock, side scan. I think spot lock. Oof. Spotlock is a hardcore player, man. I don't think we give Spotlock enough love. It's a hardcore player fish, just for the relaxing fun. I know I have a lot of river rats probably in my comment section. What Spotlock has done is such a game changer, and I know because like the Upper Potomac right now is always super high and muddy, and to be able to Spotlock an area and not be on the trolling motor is a godsend. It's so freaking nice. I almost want to put scope in that same comparison there with that, but I don't know if that's the proper one. But let's continue here with what Randy has to say. I'll back up a little bit. There we go.
People's successes, but we've seen this repeatedly for the last 2 years. Is the periods of certain, if they have some type of a period limited, to using it or not, the weights are always smaller when they don't have forward-facing sonar.
Agreed.
Another thing along the similar lines here, guys, I want to comment on this. Is one of my subscribers, so much of the stuff that I do on my channel, my subscribers and my viewers send me, news, what's going on, which I really do appreciate that, guys. I mean, anytime you guys hear something that's newsworthy, please feel free to shoot me a private message about it. That's how I keep up to breast a lot of it, because I can't follow everything. But anyway, one of my subscribers sent me a little video clip of this one YouTuber out there that he was talking about the fact that it's not fair for anybody to take forward-facing sonar away from the younger anglers today, because that's all they know how to do. And this dude I watched the video. He wasn't there. There was nothing beyond that. It's like, it's not fair that you're going to take forward-facing sonar away from these anglers, because that's how they learn to fish, and they don't know how to fish up on the bank. So therefore, it's not fair for you to take their spotlighting machine away from them, because that's how they learn how to fish.
I'm trying to figure out some benefit of the doubt here with what he's saying. Again, if you guys have thoughts, 667-307-8583. I'll open up the phone lines here in a second. So a random person that we don't know who it is messaged him and said, it's not fair. Organizations want to take away the spotlighting box from the young people. They don't know how to fish the bank. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think young anglers do know how to fish the bank. Are we saying Trey McKinney doesn't know how the hell to fish the bank? Is Brandon Polnick considered young now, or do we call him an old guard? My God, that's scary to think Brandon Polnick's an old guard. Good God. Is Jacob Wheeler an old guard now? Because he can catch them both ways. So I'm a little confused. Like, what does he mean by young anglers? Like high school age, college age, rookie level? What is our definition of young? Because we have professional anglers. I mean, Rick Klung, Shaw Grisby are up there to like 100 years old, and they were still fishing. So what are we talking about the average age of a young angler?
Guys, I found it just really, really pathetic that we have been relegated, and we are creating a generation of anglers out there that are completely reliant on technology to catch bass, or they're just unable to, they have no clue what's going on anywhere out there. Now, how did we ever get to...
Why is he saying... Why is he saying that basically all young anglers are retarded and they just use a video game? Without a video game, they suck? That's very spiteful. And I don't understand. Like, there are a lot of good anglers out there that can also catch them. Like, the college program is extremely good. Extremely good.
To that point, how did we ever get to a point where we are creating a generation of bass anglers that don't know how to do anything that don't know how to do anything other than look at a video game screen? If people don't see that as inherently messed up, I don't know even what to say about it. And it's like, who are the people that are teaching these younger kids out there? It's like, do you really feel good about that? If you're gonna teach a younger angler to become a bass angler, do you really feel right and good about it that you're making that person use a crutch of electronic technology to catch
a crutch? Oh, okay, I'm gonna try to help him out. Let me see what I can do for him. Okay, so maybe it's like he's trying to say, like, you know, a younger pitcher shouldn't just throw off-speed pitches. He just needs to throw a fastball until he hits like a certain age, and he's allowed to throw a curveball. I guess that's what he's saying. Like, a younger angler needs to learn the fundamentals before they use scope, right? Like, okay, I mean, I guess there's a good argument there that if you're in high school, you should probably, you know, learn the fundamentals and then you get to incorporate scope. But I mean, can't you do that in parallel in fishing? I mean, I don't know. Like, that's interesting. We got John. We got so many people here. Jonathan says he rants in the past references the fact that all these 23-year-olds would never qualify for tours without it. Oh, that makes sense. Okay, he called it the cheater box. Okay, so this is what's going on. So funny that I'm a YouTuber, but I don't watch enough of the fishing YouTube to be up on the Randy Blockett lore.
Catch fish on that has nothing to do with what fishing is really all about. It all has to do with how people are being taught and how people are being brought up from a young age. And it's like, it has no place in it. It's like when you're trying to build foundational skills as a bass angler, it's like with football or baseball or anything, you have to learn the fundamentals. And the fundamentals in bass fishing are learning about seasonal patterns and movements of bass. It's about learning about bass behavior and their personality and their moods. It's about learning how weather patterns affect, you know, fish at different times of the year. It's about understanding how bass relate to cover, about how bass relate to cover and water clarity and water temperature in correlation to that. It's about understanding what type of bait profiles and retrieves and cadences and colors generate strikes. It's about understanding current. It's about understanding sunlight angle. The list goes on and on and on. That's why prior to the last couple of years, you never saw successful bass anglers, with the very, very few exceptions of that were young. It's like most of the bass anglers with the top of their game were in their 30s and their 40s. Really, that 35 to 45-year-old age span was like when everybody was at the top of their game, because it took that long. If you started fishing, say when you were 15, it literally took you 15 years or so to develop those skills, you know, by fishing to find fish and understanding seasonal patterns.
Okay, so I understand this a little bit more now. This is a huge issue with generations of individuals in all sports: baseball, football, soccer, basketball, badminton, and fishing. This idea of back when I was a kid and I did things, it took me this long to do it. Technology, and it's not just forward-facing sonar. What he's talking about is he wants to get rid of YouTube. He wants to get rid of Bassmaster Magazine. He wants to get rid of everything because people are learning at such a fast clip right now. I mean, what Randy didn't have when he was a kid that I had, if you look over my left shoulder right here, that is my Shenandoah University college jersey. That was back in 2014, I think, was when I'm getting old as shit. But back in 2014, when college fishing was the Wild West, high school fishing was the Wild West. Now fast forward to what college bass fishing is in 2025, where you get Alabama, like almost, I think you almost get like a full ride, right? You get good scholarship money to be a professional college bass angler, so to speak. Like, that has come a long way in 10 years. It's insane how good high school, college, and they have like pre-high school programs. And if he wants to make the baseball analogy, because I taught baseball for 16 years of my life, it's how I paid my bills. Travel ball has blown the hell up. You basically at age 6 are told, like, hey, guess what? We think you're going to be a pitcher. This is your position until you die. And we're going to prep you for the middle school team that is connected to the high school JV coach that knows the high school coach who might know a college. So at age 8, you're dialed in to know what you need to know, and you get the coaching, the help, everything. So by the time you're ready to make that leap into college, you're a polished, lethal point of the spear. We can talk about the moral implications about that, because I don't think it's necessarily good and healthy to become, you know, a professional at 8 years old, because you're going to get burned out. A whole other things there. But what's ending up in all the sports is you're getting people that have, well, a lot of injuries because they're being overworked at a young age, but also their fundamentals are solid as shit because they've been doing it at a higher level with good coaching, because parents will put their money somewhere. If they're not going to put the money into live scope, they'll find a coach. You know how many people, I have so many parents that don't know anything about fishing because they didn't grow up in fishing, but they have a son or a daughter that's passionate about it. They're like, hey, listen, we didn't grow up with this, but we love our children and we want them to be good at it. Are there coaches? Are there guides? That's a whole other show that I think I've done in the past where people were upset. Like, well, you know, if your parents don't know anything about fishing, that just sucks for you. And you should suck at fishing. I had that in my comment section. Like, yeah, you shouldn't get a guide. Your kid should just suck, because unless you come from 8 generations of outdoors people, you're not allowed to be a part of this club. Really nasty things. But to my digression from that, if you're not going to tell parents to put the $1,300, I'm sorry, like $2,000 into a black box, they might put that $2,000 into a guide or a coach, whatever you want to call a coach versus a guide. I feel like that's really splitting hairs, to get their kid better refined skills. The money will go somewhere to give people an advantage, especially at a younger age. And so when Randy is talking about, well, it took me, or it took our generation 10, 15, 20 years, absolutely. Information and technology wasn't there. Without scope, your learning curve now as a youth is so much quicker than it was before YouTube, before social media. Now, is Randy saying we should get rid of Facebook and YouTube and ChatGPT and all that other stuff and go back to black and white, the 80s? Okay, that's wishful thinking about the good old days of fishing or good old days of football or baseball, but let's be real, we're never going to go back there. Whether we should or should not, it's not happening. So do I feel like that there would be no good young anglers if we just got rid of scope? or his cheater box. I think that's not fair to young anglers because there are some good ones. Now, granted, would they have the advantage they have on the older generation? Absolutely not. I agree there that if you look at the statistics, which I've run on my show multiple times, every generation, the next generation has a better absorption of technology. And this goes in from boomers, Gen X, millennials, alpha, all of them. Each generation gets better at absorbing technology and evolving. That's just human evolution, I guess, in a nutshell. My first year of college was the first year there was a big debate on, like, should kids have a computer in school? Isn't that funny? And now look at where we are with technology. And then when I did my MBA, that was my second year of my MBA program was when COVID happened. And we went fully remote. And I haven't actually worked in an office really since then or done anything since then. So it's interesting. Hold on, Barry P. Why would not having Lioscope somehow disadvantage anyone? That's what we're talking about here.
And going through a lot of different seasons to be able to actually compete.
Whoops.
And that's the way it should be. That is because it took that long.
Sorry, forgot to share my screen. My bad.
If you started fishing, say, when you were 15, it literally took you 15 years or so to develop those skills, you know, by fishing to find fish and understanding seasonal patterns and going through a lot of different seasons to be able to actually compete. And that's the way it should be. That is the way fishing should be. And it's not anymore. You know, it's when we have created this environment that we've seen at the Tackle Warehouse Invitational, or this video the guy's talking about, where people are constantly looking for shortcuts and they're missing the point about what fishing is, and they're morphing fishing into something that's just not even recognizable anymore. We have got to just rein it back, and we have got to say, what the hell are we doing here? Why are we taking the greatest sport on this earth, which is bass fishing, and we are freaking just destroying it? We are making it something that's not supposed to be. And I don't know, it just blows my mind, guys, the 25% of the bass anglers in this country that do not have the ability to wrap that concept in their heads and understand what we're talking about. The majority of bass anglers can do that, but there's 25% of the people out there that are very vocal minority that just can't get it, man. I don't know what else to say to them.
Aren't you the vocal minority?
But anyway, guys, just a little commentary there. I just wanted to run that by y'all. So I found that interesting but not surprising what happened at the St. Lawrence River this past weekend. It's like, you know, it's like anything else. Just like that tournament's a prime example. You got 75% of the tournament anglers in this country that are literally connected to an umbilical cord of their forward facing sonar unit. And I'm not.
Where the hell did he get 75%? Hold on.
Percent of the tournament anglers, it's like anything else. Just like that tournament's a prime example. You got 75% of the tournament anglers in this country that are literally connected to an umbilical cord of their forward facing sonar unit. And I'm not saying they can't catch a bass without it, but
wait, you were just saying 5 minutes ago in the video that they can't catch a bass without it, weren't you? Or did I mishear that? I feel like he was just saying that 5 seconds ago, that the youth basically are stunted because they don't know how to catch. They can't fish off the bank. They can only fish for scope. So you literally are just counteracting your argument, I believe.
It's obvious when you see something where you have 58 out of 88 guys have a reduction in their weight, and a lot of times these reductions were significant, like 7, 8, 9 pounds over the first day. You know, when they couldn't, when they had forward facing sonar versus when they didn't. So it just speaks volumes when you see that list there. So
wait a minute. So now what he's saying is, because the 70% plus of anglers are connected to scope, and that really shows because 58 out of 88 anglers day 2 of the Tackle Warehouse tour had a drop in weight. Haha, my argument is correct. No, because you just said earlier in the video that scope is like steroids, where it's going to pad the stats. So I'm confused there with that part of your argument. Where are you saying that if they didn't use scope at all through the tournament, their weights would have gone up consistently? I mean, in theory, they could have gone up consistently, but I don't think they would have reached the same heights, right? Like if you're saying you're going to catch, 20 pounds each day with scope, and then maybe without scope, maybe it'll gradually get better each day, but it's never going to hit the same overall. Like that to me doesn't make any sense. The reduction almost always happens on day 2, regardless of scope or not. Bad argument. Yeah, I think there's a better argument to be made against fishing with scope, but that one's confusing. And then of course we got to go right into here. Said it once and I'll say it again. Everyone just wants instant gratification. Let's look at a screen instead of actually fishing for fish. They're both fishing, I believe. The new generation is all about, oh, this is a fun one here. Well, yeah, actually, we're going to finish out here in the comment section before we get to the tournament. The new generation is all about the destination and not about the trip. They aren't interested in the process. They just want the results. I can feel this person's age through that comment. There was this really cool video on social media on TikTok, which it was most interesting thing was about each generation claiming that the last generation was bad. And this guy took news headlines from the early 2000s of people on Wall Street saying like, this younger generation doesn't want to work. And then he found another clipping from the 1980s saying this younger generation doesn't want to work. And he went back all the way till I think World War II, where there's a newspaper clipping from the time saying, yeah, this younger generation doesn't want to work. So it's not just now where you have a generation that says the other generation just sucks. Barry P., if you don't think that's what he's saying, the phone number to call in is 667-307-8583. Call up on the show, boss. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what's going on here. I think that... I don't think that's what he's saying. We have to just take him at with face value about what, like, we can't, and this is the hardest thing with stuff like this. We're trying to look at art and we try to have our own perspective on it necessarily. And I'm biased to that too, because I'm flesh and blood. I'm a human being, but we got to just kind of take what his words at face value. And at face value, at least the back end of his statement was a little incoherent there. Let's see. I couldn't agree with you more. The multi-dimensional fisherman is just about a thing of the past. I'm a Clun age dude who was taught to read many factors from sky, wind, current, birds. 100%. I think there's a lot. Look at sonar, search for structure, choose a bait, read the season, what's happening cloud-wise. The new crop got to have a prize for competing are going to end up starving to death thanks to this modern technology. I mean, I don't know. That seems kind of harsh for the young generation. I mean, I do agree, like multidimensional, like you had to because you didn't have the technology, but same thing with like writing cursive. There's a great meme online about a grandparent telling their grandkid, like, they don't know how to write cursive. Their generation wasn't taught that. By the way, could you help me turn on my computer? I need to send an email to pay my electric bill. And it's like, okay, so this one skill is lost, but this other skill has been developed and grown that the next generation needs. Like, I know I help my family, my mom and dad with certain things that they have to do just so that they can function in society. So that is a very interesting dynamic that you see here. And it kind of like reads out this comment section. He also says what's interesting is he's Clun age, but Clun also worked with LiveScope and tried to learn it. And he talks about learning how to, read the current, read the different things. But LiveScope has actually proven a lot of those myths to be false. It's fascinating what scope has taught us about fish behavior, where they set up, where they spawn, where they don't spawn. The fact is like how fast a bass is. I mean, that's the biggest thing that blew my mind is when a bass wants to eat your lure, it can. And I think this is where like shallow water fishing is so fascinating to me, where that fish wants to hunt in shallow water. Like, I think the fish for scope, this is my hot take here, I think scope fishing will die off naturally. I think fish are highly intelligent. They're really intelligent. Just watch them for the people in my comment section that have scope. They're getting smart. And I had the guy that runs Lake Fork, and Sam Rayburn, all those places. I had him on the show. Jake Norman last year. He did a 2-year study on Forward Facing Sonar, and he talks about how the fish are getting very, very nervous about boat pressure, that they are really timid about engines and boat shadows now that they didn't used to be on these offshore places. Before, when they would hear a 250 drive past them, now all of a sudden they're like, because they know what's coming. It's that scope. Because they do feel safer and more comfortable to ambush in deep water, it takes a lot more to fool them. Before, where you could probably catch them at 50 or 60 feet on the scope, you have to be at like 100, 120, maybe 80 feet at a short range to try to get them to bite, because that boat pressure, they can feel all that stuff and they're going to get lockjawed. And if a bass is in open water like that, think about if you have a jigging minnow and you cast that sucker out there, you have to do so many things perfect to convince him to eat, because he has the ability to see that thing with all of his senses, and there's nothing telling him that he is in a rush to eat or consume that bait. Cut to a lily pad field. Let's go Nye Reservoir in Virginia. Tons of lily pads and stuff. When you have the lily pads there, it's going to rob the fish of one of their main senses. So if you throw a frog or you throw a swim jig or something over top those pads, it feels it with its lateral line, and it's looking up to the best ambush point there is, which is the surface of the water. The surface of the water is one of the biggest ambush points there is, and it's the same thing with the shore. If you parallel your boat and you throw a crankbait or a little fluke like right up against the bank, whether it's that or up on the surface, that is a place that in the fish's brain, I think this is where you're getting the biggest reaction strike. It is a core genetic response, like a cat and laser pointer, when there's something at the surface of the water or something pinned up against the bank that tells them to really get to investigate it, because that thing is trapped and it knows it. A jigging minnow in 30 feet of water isn't necessarily trapped. Plus, it can't get away either. It can just see that jigging minnow and it can make a choice. It's fast enough to get it if it wants to, but it can really inspect the shit out of it. If you have a bait going across the pads at 100 miles an hour, it's got to make a decision real quick, and you can ambush it a lot easier. So I think one thing that's interesting, this is a hot take, and you can argue with me in the comment section. It's perfectly fine on this bad boy. I think if you had more shallow water vegetation, if you had more of a shallow water bite, people would want to do that, because those fish are easier to trick in a way, because you have the ability to do a reaction strike easier or more consistently than a fish in 30 feet of gin clear water. Fish in 30 feet of gin clear water is a lot harder to fool, especially even with scope. It's a lot harder to fool that thing. It feels comfortable. It feels like there's no need. You can't trigger it as easily. You put a chatterbait. Why do you think chatterbaits are so big on our fisheries with all that grass? That fish feels that bait coming, but it doesn't see it necessarily until it rams into the grass clump he's in, and then it's darting away. And he has a split second to make that decision. With that minnow, he feels the boat, he feels the sonar. You launch your minnow, it feels it, and then it can see it from a mile away coming at it. I think this fish can see a bait a lot farther off. Scope, again, one of the cool things scope has taught me, when you would fire a big topwater at Lake Anna over 50 feet of water and it hits a splash, and you see a bass come off the bottom in 50, 40 feet of water to come look at what the splash was, that effer can see. That effer knows something's going on. It's incredible how smart they are. But again, going back to the lily pad field analogy, he can't necessarily see that frog dancing. He can kind of make it out, but he can't necessarily. And it's getting away. And as soon as it breaks away from that kill zone, he has a split second to make the decision. Do I eat or do I not? And that's why I think that shallow water bite, that reaction bite, is going to stay more consistent if we allow for shallow water habitat to thrive. So I guess my biggest takeaway about this is we should really ask more governments to let us put lily pads and SAV and stuff like that into our lakes. Because think about punching. Punching still works a lot of places. Why? Over 1,000 years of fishing, why does it still work? Because it's a core reaction strike. You're dropping a bait on top of the fish's head, and it's gonna react to it. And it's just there, and it's not. Now you could be like, well, aren't you dropping a jigging minnow on his head? Yes and no. Like, you're dropping the jigging minnow on his head, but I don't think that's a fair comparison, saying dropping a jigging minnow on a fish in 30 feet of water out on a point is the same as dropping a 1 ounce weight on a fish in a heavy mat. I think that's two distinct situations. in my opinion. I could be wrong, and I would love for you guys to argue about that. We got Barry P in the chat. I'm going to have to reserve a little, but it seems like he was saying that tech is screwing up tournaments. Maybe I'm wrong. Again, I just walked into this. No problem, boss man. Absolutely. If you ever want to talk or call on, I like your opinion. Yeah. So what he was just talking about is Randy Blockett was just talking about his views on live scope and tournament fishing. We went through a huge PowerPoint presentation on basically the economics of bass fishing from 2018 up to 2025, bass boat sales, kayak sales, and kind of how there's a split where it seems like it's basically ruining bass boat tournaments, but not kayak tournaments. And bass boat sales have been going down since COVID, where kayak sales have been basically going up since COVID, which is fascinating to me. And that was just one of the things that we were talking about in the chat as well. I think Randy Blockett does make some interesting points about the weights that they do differentiate between a scope tournament and non-scope tournament. I do tend to disagree when he says, it seems like he implies, maybe he doesn't necessarily imply it, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt there, that the younger generation, the snowflakes that some people in his comment section have said, the reason they're all so good is because of scope. And I like to pull back, like, I think it gives them an advantage 100%, but to say like the Trey McKinneys of the world, like we had Brandon Polinick before, and Brandon Polinick was there before scope was big when he was a rookie. I think the college system is just getting really good. And I think we got to tip the cap to the middle school, high school, and college fishing programs. And if you are in a middle school fishing program on Lake Hartwell and you fish a middle school, high school program with coaches and everything from middle school through high school through college, and then you hop in and win a Bass Open on a Hartwell, and then people are like, well, it's because of Forward Facing Sonar. And it's like, is that it? Is that really why that kid who fished Lake Hartwell from middle school through high school through college, and then he did good on Hartwell? Is that why? Is because of scope? Like I feel like that's but is that an easier thing to also blame, just to point to scope and say, yeah, clearly it's because of scope, that's why that kid did well? I don't know. I feel like it's too easy also of a cope. I do think it does 100%. I think the gap that you saw the first couple of years of with live scope, 100%, I'll tip a cap as a generational thing. It's younger anglers do have an advantage. Older individuals have a harder time learning technology, and I think that really opened up the gap. But if you didn't have it, you were going to have this guard change as well. I think we're always going to have a guard change too. I feel like that's what's weird right now. I saw something again on social media a week ago talking about how all your childhood heroes are gone. It was like Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. They're all gone. Like all the quarterbacks I grew up with, they're gone. And it's just 100% this turnover of the new guard. Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers should be gone too, honestly. Brett Favre, they're all gone. And it's weird, the last couple of years, you're seeing this cultural shift in the anglers. And we want to blame scope, which 100%, to be fair, tip of the cap, there's definitely a part there with that. I will also say that eventually they were going to retire and you're going to have this turnover in, like, this is another argument too in bass fishing, is like, how long should you be allowed to compete for? As long as you can be competitive. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think it should be said that you have a right to compete until you're 90, in the sense of like, what makes Rick Klung so cool is he was able to compete that long. He was competitive. A Jamie Moyer or Tim Wakefield, a baseball player that can pitch until his 40s or 50s. That shouldn't be like, okay, we're going to make sure you have a spot on the major league roster, even if you're 100 years old. It's like, well, can you perform? And they're like, well, no, he can't, but we want to mandate that you're allowed to. It's like, that's not how sports work. You know, sports, any sport, you do have a finite time to compete. So at that end of the spectrum, I don't want it to come across as like we're guaranteeing somebody a spot indefinitely. You know, you still have to perform to an extent. And like with any athlete, you have a finite career. Like, that's just how it is. Let's see, we've got Tom here in the chat. Some of the disadvantages would be when you pull up to a spot and use scope to look for bass off a point or on a submerged structure. An angler who doesn't have it may waste time during the tournament fishing a spot that doesn't hold any bass. The belief that you just point the scope and cast at a fish on the screen and put the bass in the boat is greatly overblown. Sure, it happens, but not as easy as it's being portrayed. No, 100%. And I think that's the most interesting thing about scope in general is the amount of data you get and immediate. The most fascinating thing the first time I used scope was, it was jerkbait season, going to points, And I scanned a point and there was nothing there. It was quite literally, and I sat there for like 20 minutes, just throwing my jerkbait, jerking around. I couldn't see any fish, and no, there was no fish on my jerkbait. And I moved 3 or 4 points, and I finally found like a couple of fish where they're supposed to be. Classic scope setup. You cast it out there, and I caught them. And then it kind of was the epiphany. It's like, oh my God, if you're good at this, you could just quickly know like these 3 points aren't going to work, and I move. Whereas before, you would sit there and work it and be like, well, my hunch is this is a good point. And it's like, oh my God, like the ability for you to eliminate water is insanely elevated with the technology. We got Barry P in the chat. I'm going to try to read this. I do nothing but kayak fishing on... Oh, okay. I do nothing but kayak fishing on smaller rivers. Hey, me too. Kayak fishing on smaller rivers. I'm likely out of bounds on being able to make an argument either way on deep water. No, dude. No. Barry, are you a smallmouth guy? I live Shenandoah River, Upper Potomac River. That's kind of like my place. So I didn't know if you're like a smallie guy or if you're fishing like spotted bass kind of rivers there too. No, I agree with you about kayak fishing. I think kayak fishing is the way of the future, especially like in those kind of places where you're right. Like, you're not going to scope effectively. And you see that when like the big kayak tours go to the Susquehanna River. I would love to know how many of those bad boys actually scope for a living and are kind of effective with it. I think that stuff would be fascinating information to kind of find out as well. So let's just do, we got one more thing that we're going to be rounding up here. Again, so that was that with the old Randy Block. I think I got through everything I want to talk about. Oh, no, I actually got one more thing that we have to go through here. We got one more thing, which is the... there we go. All right, we got the tournament, bass fishing tournament. Here we go. I'm going to release this again tomorrow as well. We got Barry P, Potomac and the Monocacy. Ah, the Monocacy. Yeah, dude, that's a great fishery. The Monocacy is really, really rebounding right now. I think we got Cliff, and we got the Cliff, who is the Upper Potomac, I don't know, legend, river rat, however you want to put it. All right, guys, the last thing we're going to end this Monday Night Live with right here. Here it is. We have, yeah, there we go. Here we go. The Summer Sizzler updated stats. I'll be releasing this also as a separate video tomorrow. So if you guys didn't hear it, it's absolutely okay. So first thing we're going to be getting into here is the mixed bag. All right. So perfect. All right. And I think I updated this. Yes, I did. Making sure this is the right slide. All right, mixed bag division. We're going to update it. In first place, we have Gary Duncan with 133.25 inches. We have in second place, we have Brian Health with 133.25 inches. We have a tie, baby. We have a tie. We got Barry that says Cliff and I should go fishing together. Absolutely. In third place in the mixed bag division, we have Aaron Ball with 100 and wait, what's going on here? 55 inches. Yep, this is the wrong one. I thought that was the wrong one. With the big bass, we have Gary Duncan with a 20-inch largemouth. In third place with big fish, we have Aaron Ball with a 20.5-inch largemouth. In second place, we have Steve Beck with a 21.25-inch absolute water whale of a largemouth. And in first place, we have Bruce with a 22.75-inch largemouth. This is an absolute freaking water whale stud, dude. I mean, this thing is massive. I don't know how you did that. And we're going to the smallmouth division next. And again, guys, this will be re-uploaded tomorrow separately, so don't worry if you don't see this. For the smallmouth division, I'm going to make sure I did this all right. 31, 32. Okay, yep, this is the right one. In first place in the smallmouth division, if the tournament ended today, we have Jacob Hausman with 162.25 inches. In second place, we have Jared with 155.25 inches. In third place, we have the Riverman himself, Cliff Bennett, with 149.75 inches. In fourth, we have Jose with a 143.50 inches. In fifth place, we have Todd with 142.0 inches. In 6th place, we have Joe Edwards with 134.50 inches. In 7th place, we have Matthew Gills with 131.25 inches. In 8th place, we have Toby Foster with 131.0 inches. In 9th place, we have Trey Leach with 122.75 inches. In 10th place, we have Charlie Russell, who did extremely well, I think, this weekend on the Jackson Kayak Trail, dude. So congratulations there. Well done, sir, with 121.75 inches. In 11th place, we have Douglas Spatch with 62 inches. And then we have Ty with 56.75. Now, let's get to the Smallmouth Big Fish Awards. So, as you guys know, I'm giving away 2 Smallmouth Big Fish Awards for fish caught in Pennsylvania waters, Maryland waters, and Virginia waters. Let's get with the second biggest smallmouth caught in PA waters right now is Jared with a 20.25 inch stud. That is a beautiful smallmouth. And in first place for the Pennsylvania waters, we got Jake Houseman with a 20.5 inch beauty. That is an absolutely beautiful fish. All right, let's get into Maryland waters. So for Maryland waters, which is basically all of the upper Potomac, even into West Virginia, we're just going to do that as well. Absolutely interesting here. Joe with a 19.5 inch smallmouth, beautiful fish. Now 19.5 only got him second place because this man came to play. Cliff Bennett dropping the hammer with a 21.5 inch smallmouth. This thing is a goddamn dinosaur. Absolutely a beautiful fish here. He's in first place with this 21.5 inch stud. I don't know if that's going to be topped. Let's go to the Virginia division. In the Virginia division, in second place, we have Matthew Gills with this beautiful dark black 19.75 inch smallmouth. Right now, it's got him in second place, which if the tournament ended today, all these people that won Big Fish would win $100 and a plaque. And then in first place with a beautiful 21.5 inch again, Ty. Dude. If the tournament ended today, again, $100 and a plaque to these guys right here. That thing is massive. We have 2 21.5 inch smallmouth dropped. Again, Virginia now showing some love. I think this might be the biggest smallmouth the past year we've had come out of a Virginia waterway, which is absolutely awesome. All right, now let's get into the side pot challenge. Well, things have changed up. We'll find out. So, side putt challenge is how it works. I give away first and second biggest snakehead, first and second biggest sunfish and bluegill, first and second biggest rock bass, first and second largest crappie caught, $100 and a plaque. And then as always with all these Big Fish Awards, each individual can only win one. We call this the Hunter Smith rule because Hunter Smith had the greatest bag ever in history and caught like 50 pounds of largemouth for his best like 8 or whatever. And he won every award. So right now, if you catch a massive bluegill and you win biggest bluegill, you can only win one of those. You can apply to all the other Big Fish Awards, but you can't just clear the deck of that. Same thing with the largemouth. You can catch a bunch of 22-inch largemouth. I'll accept the one, and then we'll share the love with somebody else for the other 4 Big Fish Awards. So, side pot first is the snakehead. Let's go here and see what we got here. The second largest snakehead right now is Lee Wells with a 26.25-inch beautiful dragon. Beautiful, beautiful fish. I think Lee actually won. Yeah, he did. He won the Snakehead Challenge last tournament as well. So we'll see what happens there. Because right now, the man with this is Jason Church, a 27.25-inch snakehead. Beautiful, beautiful dragon right there. And now let's get in. And believe it or not now, we have other side pots. People started to catch some other side pot fish. So we got crappie now. The first largest crappie and the only crappie really in this bracket because he caught 2 that were the same size. Aaron Ball with 11.25-inch crappie. Congratulations, sir. So right now, if the tournament ended, he's in the top 5 for the tournament, the largemouth side of things. And he's also got a plaque for big fish for crappie and I believe largemouth too. Let me make sure. Let me double check that. Yep. He's got 2 Big Fish Awards right now if the tournament ended. Plus, he's getting another plaque for just finishing overall in the standings. So, dude, congratulations there. Let's go to the next thing, which would be the side pot for the bluegill. All right, so what is the biggest bluegill we got? Well, there's only been 1 bluegill entered in this stupid tournament. It's crazy. You guys just don't want $100 in a plaque. Right now, Aaron Ball again, dude. Oh, my God. Aaron Ball with an 8-inch bluegill. That's absolutely a stud right now for this tournament. Congratulations with an 8-inch bluegill. And right now, There's no other fish entered. No one's entered a rock bass yet. I'm actually kind of shocked by that. We got Barry P in the chat. How do we get in on this tournament, sir? So this is part of my Patreon. It's my club. If you go to Patreon, there's a link in the episode description to my Patreon. You become a club member. I do 5 tournaments a year that I fund financially out of my own pocket. I give away about $3,000 in cash prizes for each event. The events run for a certain amount of time. This tournament here, you can still register if you want to. You just need to sign up as a Patreon member, pay your club membership, and then you can sign up for the tournament. This tournament runs all the way until Labor Day at midnight. So you have all month of August to be able to participate in this tournament. And you have multiple divisions. You have the smallmouth division, and you can enter the smallmouth division or the largemouth division. You get to basically enter all of them together, and wherever you catch your fish, I'll just kind of basically sit you where you need to be sat. And we'll go over the rules here again, as always. So rules to kind of go over here. The yellow-eyed fish, I am not allowing this because there's a big turmoil in catch photo release things about people putting fish in coolers and all this stuff, and a lot of the tournament directors are nervous about this. I am implementing a new rule on my ownsies, which is if you see a largemouth with a yellow eye that's imploded like he just ate too much Taco Bell, that's a really good chance that fish is dead. I don't know a lot of largemouth that looks like they have to take a massive shit with that eye that's still alive. So this is what I'm doing. If you're a largemouth, somehow you caught a largemouth that looks like it ate too much Taco Bell and it's still alive, I'm really sorry for you. But in general, if it's got a big yellow eye like that, I will not count a smallmouth or a largemouth like that. That'll hopefully eliminate that from ever happening. And as always, for doing this, get yourself a kayak measuring board like this, catch photo release, put the mouth against it right there, left eye facing, a little indicator somewhere. You all know the deal with that. And then again with the mouth thing. If the mouth is a little open, I really am not going to penalize that, honestly. I mean, again, it depends also on where the tail is. Like if it's right at the mark of 12 inches and this is the fish that's going to change it from second to first, we'll really look into that, but generally that's going to be okay. I've had people in other tournaments, like the mouth is like completely open against the board, and it's like, dude, I'm gonna have to dock you a penalty. How the penalties work is if the fish is 12.5 inches, it's gonna go down to 12.25, and I still count the fish. So that's kind of how that works there. So then we got Barry P that says, I'm in, awesome, dude. Yeah, join me on Patreon, and then you can join the tournament. If you have any questions, you can message me on Instagram, Facebook, if you would like. And then we got JP that says, looking at the recent Bassmaster Opens on the upper Chesapeake Bay, it doesn't seem like scope was a factor at all. Dude, the upper bay right now is... So every winter, I'm doing this now where we're going to rank all the lakes from North Carolina up to Pennsylvania. We're going to rank them all. Probably going to have to make it a 12-hour show. I think I made it 8 hours last time. It needs to be 12. But it's based on how the fisheries did that year. I think right now, for the tidal water rankings, I think Chesapeake Bay is the best tidal water fishery right now. I mean, those weights were pretty damn good. I mean, the James River and the Potomac were good. I would give them like a B+, maybe. But the Chesapeake Bay might be an A+. Like, it was on fire. I was pleasantly surprised with how well those weights were for the upper bay. They were really good. And I am trying to get, and then also, guys, I have reached out to... I reached out to Dylan, who won the event. He is up at Lake Champlain next week for his next event. So I'm going to work out a time to get him on the show in August, so we can actually go through all of that together. But yeah, I want to get Dylan on to talk about what he did up on the Chesapeake Bay. Absolutely fantastic win there, blowing it out of the water. Really, really fun event. But as always, guys, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to leave this up for maybe another 30 minutes. Then I'm going to shut it down. I'll re-upload it tomorrow morning. And then you're also going to get a second video that goes through all the standings. And then you might get a third video tomorrow, which will be the Potomac River breakdown that I still owe you guys. So that's going to come as well. Thank you guys all for joining me this long. Absolutely great crowds. And we will see you guys next time on Fishing the DMV. Bye. You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV